Today on CityCast Nashville, we're talking with writer Mark Blankenship about his recent article for the food section, spotlighting out-of-state food traditions that have found a home in Nashville. These meals reflect a deeper truth about the South. It's a place where people from all over the world bring their culture to the table. Mark and I also reminisce about our time living in New York City and how returning to our Southern roots surprised us in the best way. Together, we'll bust some Southern stereotypes and celebrate our city's incredible culinary melting pot. It's Thursday, March 6th. I'm your host, Marie Cecil Anderson, and this is what Nashville's talking about. I want to know, when you first came back, what was your first impression of the food scene in Nashville?
Well, I should start by saying I never thought when I left the South that I would ever return. So, let alone return so happily, which I have done. And when I got here, I was struck by the fact that in some ways, this is the food that I grew up eating because I'm from Chattanooga originally. But oh my gosh, it's the food I grew up eating with more texture, nuance, and options than I could have ever dreamed of when I was in high school. There would be one place where you could maybe get Thai food, one place where you could maybe get sushi. And honestly, none of those places were really going to be all that innovative or great, but they were fine. Now there are 6 places where you can get those things. And then there's one place to get the thing that you could never have dreamed of getting. Well, actually, we have 2 Uzbek restaurants in Nashville.
I know.
Come on.
I know. Well, so we have something very similar in common because, yes, I actually left for New York for 16 years and then came back in 2020. And what I want to know from you is, where do you get your bagels in town?
Okay, so there is a guy named Aaron who runs a place called Mr. Aaron's Goods, and he operates it out of a Chinese restaurant that's next to the place where I get my hair cut. But Mr. Aaron's Goods supplies bagels and pasta and other things to restaurants and grocery stores and such all over the city. But Mr. Aaron's Goods itself is open to the public typically Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. until they run out. So if you are looking for what I think is a very delicious bagel, I highly encourage you to try Mr. Aaron's Goods. And that's in East Nashville.
That is my friend Aaron.
Really?
Yes, that's my friend Aaron. I love his bagels. I've shouted out his bagels on CityCast Nashville. I've even said my own opinion, it's the best bagel in Nashville. So I'm so happy you shouted him out because I agree.
Oh my gosh,
I think it's so good.
This is the perfect Nashville story to me because truly, a little over a year ago, when I was just getting ready to begin my tenure as the Nashville bureau chief of the food section, I was getting my hair cut and I was telling the guy who cuts my hair what I was doing. And he said, oh, you should go next door because there's a guy over there who makes really great bagels. And then I ended up writing a story about that whole group of friends who supports each other and has found interesting ways to elevate each other's businesses. And it became one of the first stories I wrote for the food section. And I have to say that is why I love writing about Nashville, because you just have random conversations with people, and the next thing you know, you're in the back of someone's walk-in freezer talking about interesting things. It's just so great the way one thing leads to another.
Was there a certain place in Nashville that you sat down and had a meal and it made you feel like, welcome home, Mark?
Oh, that's such a great question. I'm going to have to cheat and answer it in 2 ways. The place that made me feel like I had returned to Southern food excellence is absolutely Arnold's, which is a meat and 3 that is famous for a reason. And then the other one is one of the Uzbek restaurants I mentioned. It's called Uzbegim, and it's in the back of a pizza place called Michelangelo's. And the food is so delicious, and it is so unexpected that it would be there. And I really felt between the opportunity to eat the food that I had grown up eating, which is Southern food, because my grandmothers were making that, etc., and the opportunity to eat something really surprising in an unexpected context, I thought, man, this is exactly where I want to be. I get a little taste of what I've always known and was missing, and I get a little taste of something that I couldn't have anticipated and wouldn't have expected to get here.
That's exactly how I felt when I first came to town, and I was so shocked at the amount of local restaurants who are blending their Southern roots along with their cultural and personal traditions.
Yeah.
Like Taylor, I love Taylor so much.
Yes.
And I feel like it does such a great job at uplifting the true Southern experience with Indian flair.
Yes.
Are there any other restaurants in town that are doing something similar?
Well, I'm so glad you said Taylor, because Vivek, who runs that restaurant, is so welcoming. And you're so right that it is the Southern experience in an Indian context, because he himself is from this area, but his parents are from India, and he's just mixing those flavors with that understanding of how to be hospitable. And I loved it.
What are some other Southern cuisine collabs that come to mind?
Okay, this might be a bit of a surprising answer, but there is this brand of sparkling water called Maypop that you can find in lots of places around town. And the guys that run that company are neither one of them from Nashville. They moved here and started the business together as friends, but they are so gregarious and warm and welcoming. And so if you go to one of the farmers markets that they're often at the Franklin Farmers Market, for instance, you do feel like you're getting to know them. But then you also get this really delicious real fruit juice infused sparkling water. And I care about their water because I know them. And they seem to just have a natural knack for making people feel like they're wanted when they purchase a product. That feeling of immediately having kinship with people is so Southern, and Nashville does it incredibly well.
In your article for the food section titled Homecoming Dinner,
Yes.
you wrote about sharing meals with people who've left their home cultures to come to Nashville. Twice in 1 month, you said you had the chance to experience this. Can you tell us about those meals and what they meant to you?
Absolutely. So the food section, or thefoodsection.com, is a magazine that explicitly exists to explore Southern food and Southern culture. So I'm always on the hunt for experiences that feel like they are rooted in something specific. You know, I don't really want to write a restaurant review. I want to understand the context of the restaurant. And so I have a friend named Sarah who lives in Franklin who is Hawaiian. And she was telling me about a Facebook group that she was in called Hawaiians of Middle Tennessee. And I thought, how specific and interesting. Because if there's one thing that Tennessee really isn't, it's Hawaiian in its topography.
Right. Sarah
was kind enough to connect me with the woman, Lokalani, who founded that group, and she let me in the Facebook group. And I learned that they were having a paina for Christmas. And a paina is a Hawaiian celebration with food, essentially. And I went, and it was amazing. Not only was the food incredible because everyone had brought food themselves and it was just delicious. And there were tables upon tables in this rec center that were weighed down with this delicious Hawaiian food. But also people there were using this as an opportunity to just dig into some traditions that they love. And I was invited to participate in a skit. I put on some floaties and pretended like I was someone who owned a swimming pool company. And just was like, and so, you know, it just was really striking for me to see that this group was working hard to make sure that the things that they left when they moved here were still going to be touchstones for themselves and for people who maybe hadn't been back to the island in a long time, including some children who had been born here. And that was just really wonderful. And it reminded me of the things that I used to feel as a Southerner in New York, how I would feel when some of my Southern friends and I would get together. Oh my God, I'm really outing myself with what I'm about to tell you, but we would have Dolly Parton nights, or we would have a Steel Magnolias night, and we would just like watching Steel Magnolias with other Southerners in New York just felt very soothing. It was a balm to my soul. So then I got interested and I thought, okay, well, who else is in Nashville that is trying to maintain a sense of connection to another state that they moved from. And I became aware of just the number of Chicago-style restaurants that are in Nashville. I mean, there's really quite a few.
Right.
There's Jay's Chicago, there's Campione's, and I ended up interviewing the folks who run a restaurant in Goodlettsville called Staley's Chicago Italian Dining. And the owners there, Tom and Lily, also very much want to create a sense of Chicago that feels to them authentic. So they drive up to Chicago to get certain brands of chips and tamales. They have a framed Chicago police officer's jacket that a customer gave them hanging on their wall. They welcome their customers to have these specific Chicago debates about how they are supposed to order their Italian beef sandwich. They let you decide if you want cheese on it or not, which is apparently a big deal in Chicago. And having those experiences where there was the Hawaiian context and the Chicago context, and it wasn't just food, it was the trappings, that really made me reflect on the fact that I am no longer an outsider because I'm back home. And I have this really fortunate job that lets me go experience how transplants are trying to do for themselves here what I used to try to do for myself in New York. And I just found it to be so stimulating and so honestly moving, because it's just a reminder that everybody's home is somebody else's outpost. So I'm back home. New York used to be my outpost, but now it's the same in reverse for other people. And I just really love having the double consciousness of that and enjoying the things that feel like home, but also enjoying the things that other people are doing to bring home here.
My favorite place in Nashville to take friends from out of town is the Country Music Hall of Fame and Museum. It makes me feel so proud to be able to show off our city's country music roots. But y'all, it's not just a tourist attraction. Did you know that local kids always visit free at the Country Music Hall of Fame and Museum? Kids age 18 and under who are residents of Davidson and bordering counties, including Cheatham, Robertson, Rutherford, Sumner, Williamson, and Wilson, can take advantage of all the engaging and educational activities the museum has to offer this spring at no cost. Plus, they can bring 2 accompanying adults who get 25% off admission. I love the museum's Taylor Swift Education Center. They've got music, dance, art programs, and on Fridays this month, you can check out Irish step dancing, a musical instrument petting zoo, and plenty of other fun activities. Learn more and plan your visit at countrymusichaloffame.org/local-kids. I want to ask, and I want to be sensitive about this question, but I have a lot of New Yorker friends who kind of look down on even Southern cuisine. What do you wish New Yorkers or anyone else that may have preconceived notions about Southern cooking or the South in general, what would you say to them?
I guess what I would say is this. Even if you don't want to do the historical research about the fascinating ways that Southern dishes came into the United States, the many, many cultures that collided to make these dishes happen, I would encourage you to try more than one example of any Southern dish and just become aware that there are so many ways of making a biscuit. There are so many ways of preparing fried chicken, fried okra. There are so many ways of making these Southern foods, just like there are so many Southern accents, because the South is not monolithic. It's actually filled to the brim with perspectives. And the same is true of the food. So if you think that Southern food is too heavy for you, or you think that it's not your cup of tea, I would just say, and I guess I just try to live this in my life no matter what, don't fall into the trap of writing off an entire type of thing because it's hard to look and you don't want to be bothered.
Were you surprised to discover the amount of diversity here in Nashville when you came back?
I was not surprised because I have maintained ties with lots of my friends and family from this area who have a real lust for life and a real hunger for a variety of experiences. And they were telling me about stuff that they were doing right here, and it sounded cool. But what I learned is that there's hearing about it and there's experiencing it. And the joy of experiencing it is that, oh my gosh, there really is more than I could have possibly imagined that's going on here. And Nashville just contains multitudes in a way that I didn't understand when I was younger, because my life when I was a kid was just focused on that kid's narrow perspective of things. But to come back from a more cosmopolitan adulthood and discover that Nashville was ready, and in fact had been ready to stimulate me in the same way, was a delight.
Do you notice any cultural gaps in Nashville in the food scene?
Though I know that there is Thai food all over Nashville, I have not yet had enough Thai food experiences here. And in Manhattan, especially where I lived, you could not walk 4 inches without tripping over 6 Thai food restaurants. So obviously Deg Thai is good, but I have yet to find the panoply of Thai food options that I experienced up north, and I wish that there were more. Now, if you are listening to this and you are thinking, well, he's a fool, he's missing this, this, and this, let me know, because that is the thing I want for 2025 is more Thai food in Nashville.
Yeah, and let me know too, because what I love the most is Pad See Ew with the very thick rice noodles. The thick. They're like an inch thick, y'all.
Yes.
I cannot
You just, like, my soul just lit up.
I haven't found that in Nashville anywhere. So if you're listening and you know.
It actually, in a weird way, makes me feel better that you haven't found it either, because I was just thinking, am I bad at this? Like, I just can't find it. Because, oh my God, the Pad See Ew with the green vegetables that they work in there. And then I would always get it with beef, and then the chewiness of the noodles against the sort of the slight chewiness of the beef. It was just so perfect. It was so comforting. Oh my God, now my mouth is watering, and that's all I want.
Last question. It comes from our executive producer, Whitney Pasterek. She would love for you to weigh in on Texans in Nashville. And specifically, she says why Shotgun Willie's is the best barbecue in town.
Wow. Well, I must, with somewhat of an embarrassed face, admit that I have not been
I haven't either.
to Shotgun Willie's.
I haven't either, because I'm always at Peg Leg Porker, and I cannot and will not cheat on them.
Peg Leg Porker is delicious. And I also happen to be within walking distance of what I think is the best Martin's in town, which is the one that's near Belmont, that if you go in, they have a tin bucket full of moon pies, and you get a free moon pie just for being there. So that is a place that my husband and I went when we were looking around for places to maybe move when we were going to come here. And that meal that we had at that location just felt like there was an amber glow around it, if you know what I mean. So for me, the Martin's near Belmont with the bucket full of moon pies is the best barbecue in Nashville. I'm not going to say I'm going to fight about it, because everybody wins if you're eating good barbecue, like, you know, but that's going to be my heart right there.
Mark, it's been such a pleasure talking with you. Can you tell our listeners at home a little bit more about the food section and any upcoming articles you have coming out?
Yes. So the food section is at thefoodsection.com, and we cover food and culture all across the South. I am the Nashville bureau chief, but we have bureau chiefs for other parts of the South who are doing great reporting. And we also have what I call the food section mothership, which just does general interesting things that cover the southern region in surprising ways. So thefoodsection.com. It's a completely independent publication founded by a fabulous journalist named Hannah Raskin. We would love to have you come join us. And I have a story coming up. Oh, it was a story I wasn't expecting in a way, because I was writing about this place in Murfreesboro called the City Cafe, and I thought I was going to be writing a story about how it's 125 years old and it's not going anywhere. And then the very day that I ate breakfast there, they announced that they were closing.
Oh, no.
And so what the story is becoming is about the people who gathered there every morning at these distinct tables that they each had for their own group. And I'm writing about the surprise dissolution of all of these really vibrant social scenes that were all happening in this one restaurant. And I'm tracking where one of those groups is going to go, because I think the loss of this restaurant is so much more than the loss of a place to get an omelet. It's really about the loss of a third space in that sociological way where these people could go and just relax and be themselves. And so I am writing something of a eulogy, but a hopeful eulogy, because they're also currently trying to find a new place to go, and I'm tracking that as well.
Oh, well, I cannot wait to read that and share with our listeners. Well, again, thank you so much for being here, Mark. It's really been a pleasure.
Oh my goodness. I loved it. Thank you so much for having me.
That's all for today here on CityCast Nashville. If you enjoyed the show, why not tell a friend? Rate the show, leave us a review, and subscribe to our Hey Nashville newsletter. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. Doodles.